Wisdom is applied sciences, so you know what time it is. It's time to talk about food cravings, the number one threat to your diet, the number one threat that would keep you from reaching your ideal body goals, right? Your ideal physique goals. Now, when we think about things like food cravings, some things may come to mind. Cookies, cakes, ice cream, pies, right? You may think of mac and cheese, stuffed crust pizza, chips and dip, candy bars, candies, whatever the case may be, right? These are all foods that would be loaded with ingredients that cause you to gain an unnecessary level of body weight and body fat that will make your abs look nice and blurry, right? So in particular, what I want to take some time to do is explain what it is you actually crave with these food cravings, what triggers these food cravings, and how to satisfy your food cravings with foods that will not hinder you from reaching your goals, but actually help you to reach your goals. There's three key elements to all of your food cravings: sugar, salt, and fat. And I'm willing to bet a lot of money that all of your foods that you crave have at least two, if not all three of these things. Think about it. Let's take a look at something like ice cream. What are three essential things to ice cream? Sugar, salt, and fat. The fat could be the dairy. The sugar would be, well, the sugar, processed or otherwise. And then of salt, really just a little bit of salt added to your ice cream, right? Same thing goes for pies or donuts, cookies, whatever the case is, right? You need sugar and salt to bake. You need fat, right, in order to make a delicious, plush, thick, satiating pastry, right? And the same thing even goes for something like mac and cheese or pizza, but those things would be less on the sugary side and more on the salty and fatty side. Even the same thing goes for chips. Chips, not so much on the sugary side, but very heavy on the salt and the fat. So it really begs the question, well, why? The reason for this is because there is a certain chemical process in a relationship that goes on between your brain and your gut. Gut as in your digestive tract, right? Now, there are living organisms in your gut. Some people call this gut bacteria. Some people refer to it as gut flora, right? But these are bacteria that live in your gut. Now, you should have a balance between good gut bacteria and bad gut bacteria that's in your gut. But your gut should be largely dominated by your good gut bacteria, because that bad gut bacteria has a tendency to encourage illness within the human body, right? Or even in other animals that are non-human. The second would be parasites. Now, especially if you're not vegan and you're eating animal products and things like that, this increases the likelihood of you developing parasites in your body. Possibly parasites that used to live within the bodies of the animal products that you were eating, right? Now, the thing is that whether it's bad gut bacteria or those parasites, they have a will to live. They have a desire to live. And in order to ensure their survival, they will latch onto your nervous system and use that to send signals up into your brain to feed them. You may think of that, and this stuff may sound pretty cringy to you. Maybe this idea is enough alone for you to really think hard about your diet choices and really stick to a more healthy diet, right? Of course, logically you should, but it's not really that easy. There's a lot of different factors that play into this. This can be your emotional state, whether it be suffering from a lack of energy, a low vibrational state, emotional, maybe you're dealing with depression or anxiety and things of that nature, right? And so I want to dive into that a little bit and really parse out exactly how that works. Let's start with sugar. Now, sugar affects you on a variety of ways. It affects you emotionally, mentally, and physically, right? Your craving for sugar piggybacks off of these things. I'm gonna start first with the physical, because that's probably the easiest to talk about, maybe the most technical, but it's something we should know. When we talk about sugar, understand that when sugar enters the body, it converts into something called glucose. Now, glucose is the primary driving energy source for the human experience. So when we're studying or learning or engaging with the world using our brains, understand that our brain is powered by a large amount of glucose. We need it, okay? If you're lifting in the gym, training hard in the gym, your muscles and your mechanical force output and performance in the gym, or let's say outside the gym if you're training outdoors or at home, this activity is powered by glucose. You need it, and you need it in large amounts. And in fact, that glucose that used to be sugar gets stored in your muscles, right, for later use. So this stuff is important. You actually need it. Now, mentally and emotionally, when you are in a low vibrational state or a low frequency state, let's say you're afflicted by some type of sadness, sorrow, or depression, whether it be acute or chronic, right? You will subconsciously and intuitively seek out sugar sources in order to help lift you out. Now, the reason for this is because when you consume sugar, it has an effect on the brain where it encourages your brain to release something called endorphins. This is often referred to as the feel-good hormone, right? Where it releases in the brain, it serves as a little pick-me-up and makes you feel good. This is where the phrase sugar high comes from, because it acts pretty much like a drug. And in fact, there's scientific studies that show that there really isn't much difference between the effect of sugar on the brain and the effect of cocaine on the brain. They're very similar, almost identical. They follow the same pathways and yield the same response. And you have the very real possibility of becoming addicted to sugar, which is a bit of a conundrum because you need it physically and mentally, but if you have too much of it, you can develop an unhealthy dependency. Now we're getting into salt. Salt also affects us on a mental, emotional, and physical level. But let's start with the physical first. Now, salt is also synonymous with sodium, but the truth is that sodium is one of the main ingredients used to create salt. Sodium is an essential mineral, okay, that you actually need in order for your nervous system to function properly, right? Sodium regulates all types of processes in the body, like, for example, your blood pressure, okay? So you can actually do great harm to your body by unnecessarily removing salt from your diet, because it's not exactly a bad thing. Like the sugar, it really depends on how much of it you use. But it's an essential nutrient that your body actually needs. Now, one of the biggest benefits to sodium is the fact that it suppresses cortisol levels. And cortisol is a stress hormone. So when you're under a lot of stress, what happens is your body, in order to counteract that stress or deal with it, it will release cortisol. Now, an excessive amount of cortisol in the body doesn't feel very good, and it leads to excess body fat and weight gain. And in particular, it can destroy your mood, your sleep quality. It can hinder you and keep you from building muscle. It can raise your estrogen levels to an unhealthy level and suppress your testosterone levels to an unhealthy level. And as a result of all of these things together, you can develop a nice, flabby, possibly even bulbous belly, okay? So cortisol can be really bad and wreck your physique and your overall health big time. So sodium suppressing those cortisol levels can add a great benefit. But there's a caveat. Because if emotionally and mentally you're under a lot of stress, you will again subconsciously and intuitively gravitate towards foods that you know are salty, which again can lead you to consuming unnecessarily high levels of salt in your diet, okay, in order to deal with that stress and anxiety. So if you are a person who struggles with the affliction of depression and anxiety, then salt and sugar in an abundance may be something that you're really, really drawn to in a dangerous way. Now, to be honest with you, fat is quite possibly the most dangerous thing on the list. Now, when it comes to food cravings, people don't necessarily crave fat, right? Fat is more of a Trojan horse into your diet. It piggybacks off of the sweet tasting things that pleasures your taste buds and affects the hormones in your brain, right? And makes you feel some kind of way to help you cope with the circumstances of life. Let's talk about this in a macro perspective. Now, we have carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Sugar is associated with carbohydrates, and rightfully so, because carbohydrates are mainly comprised of two molecules, glucose and fructose. So it breaks down in the body into sugar, into glucose, which is then immediately used for energy or stored in your muscles, etc., right? Now with those carbohydrates, 1 gram of carbohydrates is 4 calories, just 4. Protein, 1 gram of protein is 4 calories. But fat, however, 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. It's more than double the protein and the carbs. Now, with the fat adds like a fullness, a moisture, and a heft to those donuts and the cakes and the pizza and the mac and cheese and all of that type of stuff, right? It adds some girth to it, makes it more satiating, right? Feels good going down. And it's very easy to binge eat because fat is not very high in fiber. Even the natural fatty food sources are not very high in fiber. Typically, the food sources that are the highest in fiber are carbohydrates, which is why if you eat a food that is typically rich in carbohydrates, like maybe let's say beans or some kind of pasta, or even bread, right? Natural sources of bread like rye bread or something like that, it's high in fiber, so you're more likely to get full from it. Fiber is the thing that fills your gut and sends a signal to your brain, hey, stop eating, you're full. But if it's a fatty food, let's say something like, I don't know, even peanut butter or cheese, not very high in fiber, very easy to binge eat, okay? And so being that the fat is so high in calories, that's the thing that leads to eating an excessive amount of calories that leads to the excess fat gain. So just on weight maintenance alone, this is the thing that makes the fat so dangerous. It's way too easy to eat too much of it. Not all fat is created equal though. We have mono unsaturated fat, we have poly unsaturated fat, and then we have saturated fat. The saturated fat is the most dangerous out of the three. This is where all the illness comes from in the human body. When we think of things like heart disease and the high blood pressure and liver disease and insulin resistance and diabetes, right? All these types of things. All of these illnesses are a result of an excess of fat in the body, saturated fat in the body. Because you're taking in more than you can use at a time, and so you're just stockpiling it in your body, and it's showing up in your stomach, in your love handles, and underneath your armpits, and in your between your thighs, and in your neck, and it's just everywhere. You're hoarding it. And this creates the obesity and all of this type of stuff. And this is generally why we're like, food cravings are really bad, and it'll bloat you up and have you gain a ton of weight, right? It's because the Trojan horse is the fat through these foods. Now, in regards to addiction, sugar can cause an addiction, and so can salt, in order to deal with depression and anxiety and things of that nature. Fat, however, in particular can cause an addiction, but there's a particular type of fat source that does this, and that's dairy. You see, dairy has something in it called casein. Casein, scientifically, acts on the brain as an opioid. It's an interesting fact that it's the casein within the milk that makes the baby come back to its mother and continue to breastfeed or udder feed. What do you call that, right? But it causes the baby to keep coming back. There's an addictive process there. Us as human beings, we can fall victim to this as well. And in fact, when it comes to going plant-based or going vegan, the most common thing that I hear from people is, I can cut out meat, sure, that's fine. I can cut out pretty much anything. But cheese, oh man, I can't, it's so hard to cut cheese. And the reason being is because when you process that dairy into cheese, it intensifies that opioid effect from the casein. It strengthens that addictive property. And this is why it's so addictive. And then of course, things that are put into the cheese are extra sugar and salt, which makes it even more addictive. And this is why it's so dangerous. It's high in calories, it causes illness, and it's addictive. Now, in addition to that, to make matters worse, is that dairy is extremely high in estrogen. So to consume dairy is to consume estrogen, mammalian estrogen. Mammalian meaning estrogen that comes from mammals. This mammalian estrogen directly impedes testosterone levels. This is particularly dangerous if you're a man, because that cheese and that dairy can cause your testosterone levels to plummet and your estrogen levels to increase. So fellas, if you don't want to grow man boobs, right? You don't want to grow, what do they call it? Moobs, right? Breasts. Then you really want to consider cutting out the dairy if you haven't done so already, right? Now, excess levels of estrogen encourage fat retention and fat gain, along with those cortisol levels and the extra calories. It also makes it harder for a lot of men to gain muscle, because if your testosterone levels get lowered enough, that impedes your ability to gain strength and muscle in your recovery when you rest. And if you have elevated estrogen levels, that is also matched up with elevated cortisol levels, because cortisol levels, when they rise, they increase the rise of estrogen and decrease testosterone. So this is a disaster all the way around when it comes to your diet. And this is all laced into your food cravings. Okay, so that may seem real deep and intense, but of course, the worst part is over, because I'm gonna get into the solutions for these food cravings. Now the solution, the primary solution to your sugar craving is going to be fruit, an abundance of fruit, your favorite fruit. You can do this either first thing in the day or the last thing in the day, right? Meaning first thing you eat or the last thing you eat. Now, if you have your sugar cravings at night, it'd be a good idea to eat an abundance of fruit at night before you go to bed. And the reason for this is because when you get an abundance of water and sugar and nutrients in your belly right before you go to bed, this makes for a phenomenal night of rest. If you have your sugar cravings first thing in the morning, like think about it, you wake up in the morning or something like that, you want to have like a cinnamon roll, or you want to have waffles drenched in syrup or something like that, a better idea would be able to have fruit. So you have your bananas, your berries, your grapefruit, your clementines, tangerines, kiwis, apples, pears, all types of stuff, berries, the list goes on, right? And you have at least 5 servings of fruit. It's a phenomenal way to start your day. Now, yes, this works to please your taste buds, right? To satisfy the urge for sugar. It gets you nice and satiated. That's great. But in addition, this improves the quality of your health and your ability to use body fat for energy and reduce body fat in general. And it does this through repairing your gut health, regulating the chemical makeup in your brain, etc. It does all of these kinds of things. Purges bad gut bacteria, parasites, all that kind of stuff. Now, the way that this works is when you have an abundance of sugar in your diet, that sugar should be accompanied by a few things: water, fiber, vitamins, and minerals. Some of those vitamins and minerals would be things like vitamin C, potassium, magnesium, calcium, just to name a few, right? These things together will help to regulate the release of sugar into your bloodstream. You see, when you eat the waffles loaded with the syrup, or you eat the Fruit Loops, or the cinnamon roll, the sugar from those foods get dumped directly into your bloodstream all at one time, right? And what happens is you get this massive spike in insulin. You get this sugar high, and so your sugar's through the roof. But what happens is within an hour or a couple hours, you have a sugar crash. And by lunchtime, you need another injection of sugar, right? And so you can go up and down, up and down, up and down throughout the day because of these insulin spikes and sugar crashes, because the insulin spikes pulls the sugar out of your bloodstream. That causes the crash. You need more sugar to get the high again. And it's this constant roller coaster. If you regulate that sugar, you get more of a release like this rather than this, right? So you get some stability in your life. And that way, the sugar can be sustained throughout the day. So you get some peace this way, okay? Now, you can do, instead of 5 servings at once, you can do maybe 3 or 4 in the morning and then another 3 or 4 at night, right? In order to have that sustained throughout the day and be sustained throughout the night. You can do that as well, however you want to do it, right? But an abundance of fruit is really key here in that regard. Now, addressing the salt craving, you can do that through roasted salted nuts that you put right on the plate along with that beautiful, luscious, sugary fruit. Nice little combination there. Now, in addition to the roasted salted nuts, what you can also do is you can have raw or lightly steamed greens with a sauce or a dressing that has a little bit of that salt mixed in there, right? This can be anything from a spicy curry sauce to a buffalo sauce to guac, right? With some added salt, lime juice, diced bell pepper, onion, all of that type of stuff. But you seed a little bit of that salt in there with the nuts and the guac and all of that type of stuff. All good food choices, which in addition to providing you with the salt that you need, but also help to reinforce good gut health and improve your overall quality and health, as well as give you the vitamins and minerals that you need in order to keep healthy estrogen and testosterone levels and build muscle and feel great mentally and emotionally up top as well. With those roasted salted nuts also comes a good portion of the fat that you need in your diet. Now, fat is important for your diet, right? But your main sources of fat should be mono unsaturated fat and polyunsaturated fat. Some of that will come from the fruit, like that avocado, which is important. And some of it will come from some cashews, almonds, Brazil nuts, pecans, walnuts, etc., right? But all of this will provide you with the fat that you need in order to be able to sustain healthy cholesterol levels, heart health, and testosterone levels. And you can all fit it on one big, beautiful, colorful plate. Now, this is just not a solution or strategy that you implement whenever you feel a food craving. This is something that you do on a daily basis. The abundance of fruit, the roasted salted nuts, the lightly steamed or raw greens with the beautiful tasty sauce, right? The guac that you put on your vegetables with the lime juice and the added salt and the bell peppers and the onions and all of that kind of stuff. This isn't just something you do when you feel a food craving. This is something that you do on a daily basis. And so you get to have real joy and a healthy relationship with your diet. This becomes a lifestyle, not just like a thing that you use as another crutch. The beauty about doing this on a daily basis is that you satiate your cravings on a daily basis without the consequences of satiating those cravings with the horrible food choices. And when you do this all the time, what happens is you resensitize your taste buds to desire better food choices, healthier food choices. This heals your gut, which means that over time you get rid of those parasites and that bad bacteria that sends that signal up to your brain for you to go and get those Oreos, that ice cream and the pies and all of that. You don't have that bad gut bacteria and parasites to signal you to do that. Also, in addition, when it comes to the endorphin release and the chemical makeup of your brain, these foods help to reset and stabilize your mental and emotional health. It does it up top and it does it in your gut. And so you meet somewhere in the middle and develop peace and stability along with your ideal physique.